Hey, good evening, and thank you all for tuning in. That thing came on so fast, Kuno. I didn't know what was going on with the show there. But listen, it's been a pleasure to see you guys again. This week we have a special guest that I will tell you about very soon. But listen, I want to first just give a shout out to all of those folks who participated with us this Monday, and those who are out with us at the back to school parade with the congressman, and all the stuff that we did over the weekend. I mean, it was a long day. Well, it's been a long week, but somebody got to do it. So we thank you all for all of your faithfulness and your participation in our activities. And we thank CAN TV for giving us another opportunity to use this venue to bring some very important information to you, the viewing audience, around and about this city on what we can collectively do to improve the quality of life for residents in the city of Chicago. And I think we want to put a specific emphasis on Garfield Park this evening. So what I did was I got in touch with one of my brothers that I've been knowing for some years and who has literally been mentoring me on various different levels, but in all fairness, on various different levels. And he's still doing the work, and he would definitely speak for himself. But we have with us tonight one of our friends, Canoe, who's going to talk to us specifically about, we're going to use the topic of carjacking tonight, how to reduce carjacking. And we want to give you some tips. Hopefully, if you're listening, you will have some tips. You would be equipped not to become a victim of carjacking, but in the event that happens to befall you, it is just a car. Let the car go. All right? Call insurance people, all right? And get you a new one. Keep it moving. But anyway, listen, again, it's been my pleasure to come to you guys this evening. And of course, we at Fathers Who Care really believe that any man that's physically capable can make a baby, but it takes a real man to be a father. So I try to go out and seek out men who are committed to empowering young people. I think we are fathers of many, many young people out here in our community, and I really believe that in all my heart. So sit back, relax, join us as we take this journey down the road to talk about reducing senseless violence and carjacking in Garfield Park. So with that being said, Canoe is our guest. Canoe, properly pronounce your last name for the...
E.A.U. Kumare.
Say it again.
E.A.U. Kumare.
E.A.U. Kumare.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. It's our pleasure, Canoe, as always. And Canoe is currently the Director of Program Operations for Metropolitan Family Services and the Metropolitan Peace Initiative Program. And so, you know, I've kind of, as I alluded to earlier, I've kind of traveled with Canoe on some things back in the past, and we've had the opportunity to become real kind of close friends and brothers because we all love what we're doing and we all love working for each other to empower our community. So Canoe and I are currently working on another initiative that we'll talk about in a minute, and that initiative, of course, has to do with trying to reduce carjacking in our community. So we're going to talk about that tonight. But Canoe, before we get to talking about the carjacking and the seriousness of carjacking, because it's extremely serious, and we don't want you to be a victim. But before we go down that road, Canoe, I just need to ask you a question, because I always see you, you know, in the professional venue. Occasionally, you know, when we're doing things, I'll see you in the private sector, and, you know, we're talking, chop it up and all that good stuff. But I just need to ask you, and for folks who may know you, and don't get that other side of you, they only get that stern business side of Canoe, which you do have that side. But who is actually Canoe? Not the director Canoe, not the activist Canoe, not the orator Canoe, but who is Canoe, and what is your purpose, Canoe, for existing?
Well, first of all, Walter, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, pleasure.
You've been in the vineyard for 10 plus years.
Absolutely.
With this show, congratulations. Try to watch as much as I can, and definitely, like I said, I've seen you in the vineyard, West Garfield Park, engaged from a legislative advocate perspective, from a community-based organization's perspective with Fathers Who Care. And,
right.
Tip my hat to you and your family, just knowing you, getting to know you as a friend. Yeah. Over these years, I've enjoyed it and look for growth in that regard. So I thank you, and thank you for having me on. Who am I? Generally speaking, just unapologetically engaged in community to the extent that the social and economic needles are moving in a progressive direction at the end of the day.
Right.
And done that in government, outside of government, as a consultant in the nonprofit space, as a program lead, as a public policy lead, behind the scenes working on campaigns, and I guess getting in good trouble and come up
Good
with
trouble.
strategies to move.
I like that. Good trouble. But
First
you
thing
are,
that comes to mind.
yeah, but it's kind of hard for most folks to really kind of expound on what they really do for themselves because we do very little. We always serving people. And in always serving people, we rather modest when it comes to talking about our personal side. But it's always a good thing to folks to know that you do have one. And you do have to tap into that personal side every now and then to keep yourself balanced. So I was intentionally asking that question because I really wanted to know. I really wanted to know what you do for Canoe and what really motivates. I do know what motivates you because I've been in the circle with you. And I know you are 100% committed to empowering our communities, to empowering people. So keep doing the good work. But I'm going to go on down the road a little bit more with you. And I want to talk about specifically the Metropolitan Peace Initiative. What is the Metropolitan Peace Initiative?
Several divisions under Metropolitan Family Services.
Okay.
Pretty big agency, about 1,300 staff.
Okay.
Metropolitan Peace Initiatives is the violence prevention arm of Metropolitan Family Services. In essence, it coordinates about 14 or 15 organizations across the city engaged in gun violence on the ground across 29 communities. Our flagship revolves around our outreach, where we recruit and hire individuals who are incumbent residents and formerly justice involved as outreach workers. Their job is basically to intervene and prevent gun violence from taking place. And so it's probably around 500 staff that are housed at these 14 organizations that do the work that nobody sees. They too are a modest group, but they carry a big stick and are passionate about their work, live in the communities, have relationships with law enforcement, have relationships with some of the actors in an effort to prevent crime, prevent gun violence, mitigate it, to say the least. And along with that, there's some other ancillary services. It's one thing to intervene in acts of gun violence. It is another to change their lives, to move the needle of those communities forward. So with that, there's ancillary services, including behavioral health services, legal services, workforce and education services, as well as a Metropolitan Peace Academy, which is 18-week cohort that professionalizes the outreach work. So you have outreach workers that are hired across the city to be housed at these organizations across the city. They spend 18 weeks together to get to know each other and focus on the work, how to engage, and because of the relationships they have, it's gone a long way in mitigating gun violence. And I would argue that the gun violence prevention stars are finally aligned. It's taken a long time. We have a mayor that's in line with it. We have a county chief executive that's in line with it, a governor that's in line with it, an attorney general that's in line with it, as well as the foundation community.
So with this pilot of activities or this battery of activities going on, you do believe that if we continue to do the work that we're doing in these communities and engaging folks on the ground, that we can really see some systemic change in our communities in relationship to violence?
Well, we are.
Yeah.
You don't see it, you don't hear about it. Every Monday you hear about the shootings.
Right.
But in this work, you don't get credit for the fire you prevent from starting. You only get credit for the fires you put out. Right. And so for every shooting you hear about on Monday morning, there may have been 4 or 5 shootings that were prevented.
Right.
And so
it's working.
Oh, it's definitely working. And I think it's important that elected officials stay at the table, that funding entities stay at the table. I think it's important that community-based organizations on the ground move that needle. We know it doesn't work. We know locking them up and throwing them away, the key does not work.
Right.
I think it's easy to engage in finger pointing. Folk get political points for finger pointing.
Right.
But
no
at
results.
the end of the day, there are no results.
Yeah.
And the reality is this is a programmatic model. carjacking and gun violence has been a prominent feature in Chicago and across the country
Right.
for a long time, particularly in black and brown communities for the
Absolutely.
last 50 years.
Absolutely.
So you don't do away with a 50-year systemic problem with there's no such thing as
Overnight
a
Band-Aid.
panacea. And that's,
Yeah, basically. So let's go down that road then. Since we talking about that, I want to thank all of you all who's tuning in. Thank you, Vera Bonds. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you all that's tuning in on Facebook Live. Of course, our guest this evening is Canoe, and Canoe, of course, is the Director of Program Operations for Metropolitan Family Services, and particularly overseeing some of the work that's being done in the Metropolitan Peace Initiative program. And we're talking tonight about carjacking, how to prevent you becoming a victim of carjacking, and hopefully at the end of this show we will give you some tips, and we're going to talk specifically about what we can do to kind of educate you so that you're more aware of your surroundings, so you don't fall victim to some of the things that could happen to you if you just are not paying attention, and it could happen. So let's ask this question: are you familiar with the term bump and run?
I am. Let me say, we are engaging in a pilot program right now with several community-based organizations to prevent carjacking. We call it Drive in Peace, Defending Resident Vehicles in Peace. It focuses on obviously raising awareness and community patrolling. That is tethered to the already expanding carjacking mitigation facet that the Chicago Police Department announced, I believe, earlier this week.
We're at the task force, right?
And right now, unfortunately, we're at, I think, approximately 1,000 carjackings. But at the same time, there have been 895 arrests for everything from stolen vehicle to actual hijacking charges and possession of stolen vehicles. I don't think we're where we need to be, but the needle's
But we're
moving
moving in the right direction.
And that's important.
Because
I think
we're
it's
bringing
important.
awareness, and
Absolutely.
then not only awareness, there's enforcement.
And I think it's important to highlight that.
Right.
It's sexy. It gets a lot of media coverage when you see social media videos of people getting carjacked, but it's not as sexy when you talk about the extent to which it's being mitigated,
Right.
the extent to which Chicago Police Department, in partnership with community-based organizations, are trying different things to mitigate it.
Right. So here we
And
are.
so to answer your question, I am
Sure,
familiar
sure.
with
Go- yeah.
the bump and run strategy where a potential carjacker bumps your car intentionally, you get out. That's when they're oftentimes successful in taking your vehicle.
Right. You come out, you thinking you're coming out to talk to someone that
Yeah.
may have had a little fender bumper or something like that, and opposed to trying to get the information, they jump in your car, take your car, and run off.
Yeah.
So we're telling you then, folks, to be aware of your surroundings, and if someone bumped your car, beware of that, because that could be a ploy that they're currently using, and as you referenced, Canoe, that once you get out to try to assess the situation, they inadvertently then would jump in your car and run off. But let's talk about some tips, Canoe. What are some tips, if we was going to talk about tips, what are some tips that we can openly share with some folks that can assist them in not necessarily becoming a victim of carjacking?
First thing that comes to mind is if you find yourself in a carjacking situation, get out of the car.
Right. Let it go.
Give them the car.
Yeah, let it
Chances
go,
are you
right.
have insurance.
Yeah.
You don't want families to access your life insurance. It's better that you tap into your car insurance so you can get.
That was good.
So
that was good. I like that.
that's
yeah,
the first thing.
yeah.
Second thing, I think you want to park in well-lit, visible areas.
Right.
There was a time when you could socialize and multitask in your car, on your phone. In the wake of this carjacking epidemic, if you will.
It is that.
Yeah. I think that should stop. When if you're in the car, make sure you're driving.
Absolutely.
And,
keeping it moving, right?
Keeping it moving.
Right.
When you do park, don't park in dark areas. Make sure that your cell phone's always in your pocket. I actually tint my windows. I think a carjacker is less likely to walk up to your vehicle when they can't see what's in it or who's in it.
Right.
Although there are laws related to tinting your windows, but it doesn't make it illegal to do so. You can tint at a certain point.
Right.
And if you notice, more cars are
tinted.
have their cars windows tinted.
Absolutely.
So those are the first things that come to mind.
And then so it's some other things that we were sharing about like, be careful when you're at gas stations. Folks have a tendency that when you go to kind of get some gas to fill up, and you probably leave the car running, or you leave your keys in the car, and you go in there to pay for your gas. They see that as an opportunity to come in, take your vehicle, and off they go. They can see you at a stoplight. You can be at a stoplight. You may not be paying attention to your surrounding. Bam, bust your window in your car. So you got to keep your eyes open, and then be careful about certain parking lots. Don't park in unlit parking lots and garages. That's a sure sign that they can get you because you can't see them. So that's just some tips, and we hope that you are listening to what we're saying, because we don't want you to become a victim. But now I want to go and ask you about this other initiative that I know about, community partnering for peace. What is that?
Yeah, CP4P.
CP4P,
that is,
right.
Metropolitan Peace Initiatives is the division of Metropolitan Family Services. Communities Partnering for Peace is the model.
Under the initiative.
It's the model that we initiate in partnership with 14 community-based organizations, from Roseland all the way to Uptown, across 29 communities. We receive funding. If you imagine a bike wheel and you have the centerpiece, that may be MFS or Metropolitan Peace Initiatives, there are 14 spokes.
Right.
And those spokes are funded to administer the Communities Partnering for Peace model, as I said before, that revolves around outreach workers being hired, case managers being hired, to mitigate gun violence.
So there are resources actually available to educate, empower, and enlighten folks on the topic of preventing violence, other than just folks out there calling themselves interrupters.
Well, I would say it is an interrupter model. We actually call them outreach workers. It's a ceasefire model where outreach workers are actually hired to engage and mitigate, engage with actors that may be victims of violence or perpetuators of violence in an effort to mitigate it. Mitigate the instances, stopping shootings from taking place, solidifying peace agreements amongst
and things like that are currently happening.
Have been happening the last 4 years.
Yeah. So it is working. So this initiative that we're talking about, the Peace Initiative, is working. People are just not intimately involved with it, or people don't know what's going on.
Well, a lot of people do know.
Okay.
This is year 4.
Okay.
Initially, it started as a pilot. Now we started out with 8 organizations. Now we're at 14. We have about between about 500 outreach workers that work at these organizations, in these communities, live in these communities, grew up in these communities, know some of the actors. Along with that, our other ancillary services for residents. If I'm an outreach worker, I intervene in a shooting. I grew up with you, Walter, in West Garfield Park. I said, Walter, listen, we have some job readiness programming where you can actually get paid for job readiness and get connected to a job, or get connected to a GED or GED, high school diploma or GED equivalent. You can actually get paid for that. You may have families that were victims of gun violence.
Right.
They have a victim service
social workers,
caseworkers,
case managers.
You may have some legal obstacles that you need to hurdle that you may not be able to afford or may not have access. We have a justice corps through our legal arm that has attorneys, that provides representation, advocacy, training, just education on various legal aspects.
So how would one who may be in need of some of this support, how would they be able to access some of these resources?
You would connect to one of our partner organizations.
Okay. So depending on what area,
where you live,
there is a partner organization.
Yeah.
So is there
and let me say this: in 29 of the most gun violence communities across
the hot
city,
spots?
I would say hot communities.
Yeah.
Top 29.
Right. So what would be a center number that or website that they can go to where they can ascertain this information, get a listing of who these agencies are and their information?
You can go to cp4p.org or just Google Communities Partnering for Peace.
So that's cp4p.org.
Yep.
So that you heard it here, cp4p.org, and you can get additional information for whatever community that you're in. And as you just heard, there's 29 of them out here now. So
14 organizations in 29 communities.
14
so
organizations
example,
in 29 communities. Okay.
So,
it.
for example, Target Area Development is in Inglewood. They're also doing work in Chatham, also doing
And probably
work
Auburn Gresham.
in Auburn Gresham,
Yeah.
and West Inglewood.
Right.
UCAN is in North Lawndale. One North Side is in Uptown and Rogers Park. Also, it's in the Humboldt Park area.
Right.
So if you go to that site or just Google Communities Partnering for Peace, our page will come up, and you'll be able to see the organizations where we're located.
And those agencies that are representing those areas.
Absolutely.
So that's what we really wanted to get to. We wanted you to know that there are agencies out here that you can connect with if you need some of these supportive services and intervention and support. So make sure that you go to their website and check it out. And I'm going to come back, Canoe, and talk to you more about this initiative that we're talking about in relationship to carjacking. And we're trying to give to you, the viewing audience, some tips, some prevention tips, so that you will not become a victim. Now, if you are a victim of carjacking, vehicular hijacking, carjacking, same thing. If you are a victim of that, what should they do? What's the first thing a person should do if they've been engaged and somebody's trying to take your vehicle? What should they do?
Get out of the car.
Get out.
Give
of
them.
the car.
Give them the vehicle.
Yeah. Give them the vehicle. Now you made a reference. You said it's better to use your auto insurance than your life insurance.
Well, better to use your car insurance than your family to access your life insurance.
I like that statement.
So,
I was trying to get that one.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the topic. So do you believe that we as a community can actually work together collectively, work together to bring about real systemic change in the area of violence prevention in our community? Do you believe we can do that?
Yes.
Now, what can we do in short form without a magic wand? Because we can't. We didn't create it overnight, and it's not going to end overnight. It's a process, and things have to run a course. Mindsets and behaviors have to change for things to change, and then certain resources have to be pulled into the community to empower folks to take it to another level. It just ain't going to happen by just talking about it. Some things have to go. So what can we do, or how can we engage our folks to be more civically minded and to be more actively involved in the mentality of we are in this together? How can we get them to that point that to be able to work together?
I think it's just being honest about the reality. Like I said before, systemic problems don't go away with a magic wand. Systemic problems didn't arrive with a magic wand in a matter of minutes.
Right.
Gun violence has been a pandemic of sorts in communities for years. It's not going to go away. It's going to take a long time to mitigate it over time, and unfortunately, people will be harmed over time. But in the spirit of civic engagement, there's a lot of conversation about voting. If you recall, during the last mayoral, I believe a lot of the communities where we're doing work and voter turnout was less than 20%. You can't, it doesn't make any sense to engage on marching day, but play hooky on election day.
Absolutely.
And
so you're
unfortunately,
watching.
folk don't make the connection between public policy and the extent to which elected officials have the support from communities to move the needle and push rules or legislation that allow for more funding to come in communities, allow for better employment options, allow for access and expansion of mental health services, allow for legal services that address nuances of communities that have been shortchanged over the last 50 years.
You're watching Fathers Who Care. Of course, our guest today is Canoe, and Canoe is the Director of Program Operations for Metropolitan Family Services, and we're specifically talking about an initiative or a program at Metropolitan Family Service entitled the Metropolitan Peace Initiative Program. And what we're trying to do tonight is engage you and to enlighten you and to empower you. Hey, Gerard, how you doing? And all those who are maybe missing right now, I'll hit you in a minute. But we really want to equip you and engage you and to empower you to understand that we don't want you to become a victim of carjacking, and we're trying to give you some tips, and we're trying to tell you don't be in no hurry. Please be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of the bump and run initiative. Stay away from stranded motorists or being in a stranded area. Keep being lit areas. Watch yourself when you go into ATM machines. Don't stop at intersections that you are not familiar with. If someone approaches you in a parking lot or in a garage and you don't know that person, keep it moving. Don't sit around and talk, and make sure that you try to keep your phone on you when you need, so that you can be able to call for help. Did I miss anything?
Hitting the ball on the power welder. Just being consistent, being aware.
So be consistent. So now we want you to know, you just gave some numbers, about 1,000 carjacking to date in a certain area in the city.
This year.
And that is, there's an arrest of 900
About 900 arrests, specific to either stolen vehicles, specific to hijacking charges, or possession of stolen vehicles.
And you know, I've been doing some research in the area too. And you know, some of the perpetrators of carjacking are as young as 12 years old.
Young as 12, the average age is usually 14 to 25 years old.
Right.
They're usually doing it for fun, or they're doing it to sell the car.
Or joyride. Yeah,
Joyride,
which is the fun piece, right? Right.
But they're also taking the car and selling it and getting $5,000.
Okay. So what we're saying tonight, and what we're trying to educate you with, please take it serious, because we are extremely serious about what we're talking about, and we're trying to tell you to be aware of your surroundings, and please, loved ones, your loved ones, educate them. Those who are out there driving, those who are constantly up and down the road in vehicles, please let them know that this carjacking issue is real. It is not a joke. Folks are being carjacked in record numbers, and you don't hear everything that's going on, but it's going on. So can you talk to us more about why we should be engaged, and why should we continue to keep this initiative of trying to prevent folks from becoming a victim of carjacking out here in the public, and why we should continue to educate folks in this area?
Obviously, public safety is of primary importance.
Absolutely.
When it comes to living anywhere, but particularly in the city of Chicago. There's certainly a lot of propaganda, fake news, if you will, that the city and that community-based organizations are doing very little to address it. That's not the reality. I don't think
it's really not the reality.
It is not. I don't think any of them would say they're doing enough, but definitely moving the needle. And again,
there is a task force now.
There's a task force.
Right.
We're talking about a systemic problem. It is not going to go away in 15 minutes. It won't go away in 1 year.
But folks are actually meeting weekly to provide,
and not just meeting, but actually out
doing work,
spots,
right? And they out there on the spots, you know.
And community-based organizations that have the institutional and community knowledge about where it happens, who's doing it, are on the ground.
Absolutely.
You don't see those stories on Monday morning. You see the shootings.
Of course not.
And I'm not trying to mitigate
right.
The extent to which. Or to mitigate the impact that hearing about those shootings has.
Right.
But I think it's important to look at the big picture.
Yeah.
I think it's important to just come to a painful truth that this is going to take some time, and it's going to be expensive, and no one facet of society is going to be able to address it alone. Police won't address it alone. Community-based organizations won't address it alone. It's going to take a collaborative effort on the part of electeds, on the part of community-based organizations, residents, youth, and the funding to follow.
So we're
over the long term.
So you're watching Fathers Who Care right now. We got about a minute left, but we want to tell you thank you so much for tuning in this evening. If you need additional information about how you can become involved in some of this awareness and some of these activities that we're participating in our communities, give Fathers Who Care a call at 773-287-5821. If you're interested in trying to ascertain information in relationship to communities partnering for peace, go to CP, the number 4p.org, and they will give you additional information about the agencies in your community who are providing this intervention and supportive services there. And we just want you to know there are many organizations out here who are all working together for social change and community empowerment, and we need you. So if you're not going to be about the solution, please remain abstinent from being the problem. We appreciate you so much. God bless you. Good night, and keep the faith, and we'll see you. Thank you, Canoe, as always. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. We're going to keep it moving. God bless you. Good night, and we'll talk to you on the other side. Thank you.